Okay, get ready. Today we're taking a deep dive into how chemistry is changing medicine,
Yeah.
specifically looking at how we deliver drugs and how we use biocatalysts.
It's amazing how scientists are using nature and high tech to solve medical problems.
It is. It's like cocktail party chemistry, but looking really close up.
Ha, I like that.
You wanted to know the 5 big things happening right now, so
Right.
let's just jump right in. First up is enzyme immobilization.
Oh, okay.
So instead of these essential enzymes, floating around and getting lost after they do their job,
Yeah.
imagine if they were all like anchored to a support structure,
Mm.
almost like they're at a workstation,
Ah, I see.
just churning out product constantly.
That's a really good way to think about it.
Yeah, and that's what immobilization does.
Right.
It boosts how much we can reuse biocatalysts.
It really does. And think about what that means for making medicine.
Oh, yeah.
It's more efficient, but it also creates way less waste.
So it's greener.
Exactly. Much
Mm.
greener.
Okay, so that's about making things, sustainable.
Yeah.
But what about targeting? That's where
Yeah.
MOFs come in.
Right.
These metal organic frameworks, they sound like something out of a sci-fi movie.
They're pretty amazing, actually. Think about them as tiny cages
Okay.
made at the molecular level.
Uh-huh.
Each cage is designed to hold a specific drug and to release it
Oh, wow.
at the right spot and the right time.
So it goes where it's needed.
Yes,
But
exactly.
that means like fewer side effects.
Yeah, exactly. Less damage to healthy tissue.
So for chemo, that would be huge.
Absolutely. This kind of precision is a game changer for targeted therapies.
Yeah. Wow. That's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
That's a big difference from how we usually give drugs.
It is.
Now, biomimetic hydrogels, those sound like something from nature.
They do.
How can something that sounds like jelly revolutionize medicine?
Well, biomimetic basically means we're copying nature. These hydrogels are designed to act like your own tissues,
Huh.
and they actually act as a guide so that damaged cells can regenerate.
So the body can rebuild itself.
Exactly. It's like giving the body the tools it needs to heal itself.
Wow. So it's not just patching things up.
Right. It's giving the body a blueprint so it can rebuild.
So what could we use this for?
Oh, all kinds of things. Wound healing, bone regeneration, maybe even building whole organs.
Okay, this is where it gets really interesting to me.
Uh-huh.
Bioelectronic medicine,
Yeah.
combining circuits with cells. That just blows my mind.
It's pretty incredible. Think of it like tiny implants that can control nerve signals.
Like little computers inside us.
Well, not quite computers, but definitely a fusion of electronics and biology.
And this could help treat things like epilepsy.
Yeah, or Parkinson's.
And not with drugs,
Yeah.
but by actually fine-tuning the signals in the body.
Exactly.
So it's using electricity to treat diseases.
Right.
This is like science fiction becoming reality.
It is. It is.
Okay, last but not least, aptamers.
Okay.
So they're like synthetic antibodies, but made of DNA or RNA.
That's right.
How does that even work?
Well, aptamers are basically custom-designed molecules,
Okay.
and they can bind to a very specific target.
Uh-huh.
Their unique structure lets them act almost like guided missiles.
Hmm.
So they seek out and attach to very specific molecules.
Wow.
And that makes them ideal for targeted drug delivery or diagnostics.
So instead of traditional antibodies, we're making these tiny molecules do the job.
Yes, and with more control and more precision.
That's amazing. So we've covered a lot,
We have.
from tiny cages to circuits to these molecular missiles. I'm kind of overwhelmed by how much chemistry is impacting healthcare.
Yeah, it is incredible.
Before we get into the details, what's the one thing you think our listeners should remember from this overview?
I think the biggest takeaway is that chemistry isn't just about beakers and test tubes anymore.
All right.
It's at the forefront of healthcare innovation.
Right.
From making biocatalysts more sustainable to tiny circuits that can control our biology.
Wow.
The future of medicine is really being shaped by chemists.
That's a great way to put it. It's amazing how chemistry is pushing the boundaries of what's possible in healthcare. Now, let's go back and unpack each of these areas a bit further, starting with enzyme immobilization. What does it actually look like to have these tiny enzymes constantly on the job? How does that actually work?
So there are a few different ways to immobilize these enzymes.
Okay.
One common way is to trap them in a porous material,
Like what?
like a gel
Okay.
or a polymer matrix. It's kind of like we're building them a little house,
I see.
keeping them safe and in place.
But they can still do their job.
Right. It's about creating a stable environment without
Yeah.
restricting their movement too much.
Got it. Are there other ways to immobilize them?
Yeah, for sure. We can also attach the enzyme
Mhm.
directly to a solid support,
Okay.
like a bead or a membrane.
Hmm.
We do that using chemical bonds.
So there are a lot of different techniques
Sure.
for attaching these tiny enzymes.
Right, each with its own pluses and minuses.
So what are some of the challenges?
Well, one of the biggest is making sure the enzyme still works.
Right.
We don't want to immobilize it
Uh-huh.
and then have it not be active anymore.
Got it. Because if its shape changes too much,
Exactly.
it might not function as well.
Right. We're trying to strike a balance
Like, okay.
between stability and activity.
So it's a trade-off.
In a way, yes.
Besides being reusable, what are some other advantages of using immobilized enzymes?
Well, they're much more stable,
Okay.
so they can handle tough conditions.
So like in industrial settings?
Yeah, exactly.
So that means lower production costs
Yes.
and less waste.
It's a win-win for sure.
It's good for the environment.
It is. It's a big part of green chemistry.
Okay, let's talk about those molecular cages, the MOFs.
Sure.
What makes them so special for drug delivery?
Well, they're crystalline structures
Okay.
made up of metal ions
Uh-huh.
and organic linkers.
Okay.
You can think of them like a sponge.
A sponge.
Yeah, a really porous sponge with a huge surface area,
I see.
and this lets them trap and release molecules very precisely.
So they can store and release drugs when needed.
Exactly. It's controlled release.
How is that better than the way we usually deliver drugs?
Well, traditional methods often release the drug all at once,
Okay.
which can lead to all sorts of problems.
Like what?
Well, it can make the drug less effective,
Uh-huh.
and it can also increase side effects.
Oh, that makes it.
But with MOFs, we get a slow and steady release.
Okay.
So the dosage is consistent over time.
That sounds much better for patients.
It is, especially for drugs that have a narrow therapeutic window.
But there must be challenges with using MOFs too, right?
Of course.
Like what?
The biggest one is biocompatibility.
Meaning?
We have to make sure that MOFs aren't toxic.
Right, of course.
So we have to be really careful about the metals and the organic linkers we use.
It's like choosing safe materials to build a house.
That's a great analogy.
So how are they making sure the MOFs are safe?
They're testing a lot of different materials.
Yeah.
And they're also looking at ways to coat the MOFs with biocompatible materials.
So kind of like an extra layer of protection.
Exactly.
So where do scientists want to use MOFs?
Well, the possibilities are pretty much endless.
Wow.
They could be used for cancer drugs, antibiotics, you name it.
Really?
Yeah, some researchers are even working on MOFs that release nitric oxide, which can help fight bacteria and inflammation.
Wow, that's amazing.
It is.
It sounds like MOFs could really change how we treat a lot of diseases.
I think so.
Okay, let's switch gears again and talk about biomimetic hydrogels.
Right.
You said they're biomimetic.
I did.
Can you explain what that means?
Sure. So it means we're learning from nature,
Okay.
or studying how the body works,
Right.
and then trying to copy those designs.
Mhm.
Biomimetic hydrogels are usually very soft and flexible,
Okay.
just like real tissues,
Uh-huh.
and they also have a lot of water in them.
Like our bodies.
Yes, exactly. And that helps cells grow.
So it's like giving the body a blueprint to follow.
Yes, that's a good way to put it.
So what are the advantages of using them for tissue regeneration?
Well, they're very biocompatible.
Mhm.
They're made from materials that the body recognizes,
Okay,
so they're less likely to be rejected.
got it.
And they also tend to degrade naturally.
So they disappear on their own.
Exactly.
That's amazing.
It is.
So are they being used for anything right now?
Yeah, they're being studied for all kinds of things, like
Whoa.
wound healing,
Mm-hmm.
bone regeneration.
Yeah.
They're even working on hydrogels that can release growth factors,
Wow.
which can help speed up the healing process.
So we can actually engineer them to release specific molecules.
Exactly. It's really amazing what we can do now.
Okay, let's move on to bioelectronic medicine,
Right.
where technology and biology meet.
It's pretty cool.
So how does it work?
Well, our nervous system uses electrical signals
Right.
to communicate and to control our bodies. So bioelectronic medicine is all about using those signals to treat diseases.
Instead of using drugs.
Exactly.
So what are the advantages of using electrical signals instead of drugs?
Well, electrical signals are very precise.
Well,
We can target specific nerves, which means fewer side effects.
it's like a scalpel instead of a hammer.
Exactly.
So what are some examples of bioelectronic devices?
Well, one you probably know is the cochlear implant,
Oh, yeah.
which helps people with hearing loss.
Right.
There's also deep brain stimulation,
Uh-huh.
which is used to treat Parkinson's and epilepsy.
Wow. So it can really help people with serious conditions?
It can.
But it must be challenging to develop these devices.
Oh, absolutely.
Like what?
Well, they have to be biocompatible.
Right. So the body doesn't reject them.
Exactly.
And they have to last a long time.
Right. It's not easy.
Where do you see the biggest potential for bioelectronic medicine?
Well, I think it could be used for so many things.
Like what?
Chronic pain, autoimmune disorders, maybe even cancer.
Wow.
There's also a lot of interest in closed-loop systems.
What are those?
It's where the device can monitor the body
Uh-huh.
and adjust its own activity.
So it's like a smart device
Exactly.
that can personalize the treatment.
It's really incredible stuff.
It is. It's like having a tiny doctor inside you.
That's a good way to think about it.
Okay, let's move on to our last topic.
All right.
Aptamers.
Yeah.
So they're like synthetic antibodies.
Yeah.
Can you explain a little bit more about what makes them so special?
Sure. Aptamers are basically short strands of DNA or RNA,
Okay.
and they can fold into specific shapes, which allows them to bind to very specific targets.
So they're like custom designed.
Exactly.
How are they different from regular antibodies?
Well, antibodies are made by the immune system,
Right.
but aptamers are made in a lab.
So we have more control over them?
Exactly.
So we can target things that antibodies can't.
Yeah.
What are the advantages of that?
Well, it gives us a lot of flexibility. We can create aptamers for almost anything.
Wow.
It's like having a toolbox full of molecular Legos.
I like that analogy.
So how are scientists using them?
Yeah, what are they doing with these aptamers?
Well, they're being used for all sorts of things.
Yeah.
Bug delivery, diagnostics.
Anything else?
They're even being used to develop new types of sensors.
Wow.
It's a really exciting field.
But there must be challenges too, right?
Of course. One of the biggest is stability.
I mean,
Well, aptamers can be broken down by enzymes in the body,
okay.
so we have to find ways to make them more stable.
How are they doing that?
They're trying different chemical modifications, and they're also working on ways to encapsulate them
Okay.
in protective carriers.
So they're protected from the enzymes.
Exactly.
It's amazing how creative they have to be.
It is. It's a constant challenge.
So we've talked about a lot of different areas
We have.
where chemistry is impacting healthcare. What are some of the connections you see between these different fields?
I think one of the biggest is that they all kind of build on each other. You know, they're not really separate fields.
Right.
They all fit together.
Like a puzzle.
Yeah, exactly. For instance, if we can figure out how to make biocompatible MOFs, that could help us make better bioelectronic implants.
So it's like one discovery leads to another.
Right.
What other trends are you seeing?
Well, AI and machine learning are becoming more and more important in drug discovery.
Oh.
They can analyze huge amounts of data
Yeah.
and find patterns that would take humans forever to see.
So it's like a superpowered research assistant.
Exactly.
How do you think AI will impact personalized medicine?
Well, personalized medicine is all about tailoring treatments
Right.
to each individual patient,
Uh-huh.
and AI is perfect for that.
Oh.
AI can look at a patient's genes,
Okay.
their medical history, their lifestyle,
Yeah.
and then predict how they'll respond to different treatments.
Wow. So it can help us find the best treatment for each person.
That's the goal.
That's pretty amazing.
It is.
So what can our listeners do to stay informed about these advancements?
Stay curious.
Okay.
Read articles, listen to podcasts,
Right.
talk to people about this stuff.
There's a lot of information out there,
There is.
but it can be hard to understand sometimes.
It can.
So don't be afraid to ask questions.
Exactly.
The more we understand these things,
Yeah,
the better we can advocate for ourselves.
absolutely.
Well, that brings us to the end of our deep dive
It does.
into chemistry and healthcare.
It's been a great conversation.
It has. What are some of the key things you hope our listeners will take away from today?
I hope they realize how powerful chemistry is.
Yeah,
It's changing healthcare in so many ways.
absolutely.
And it's not just about drugs.
Right.
It's about new materials, new devices, new ways of thinking.
The future of medicine is really exciting.
It is.
Any final thoughts?
Just keep that sense of wonder. Keep asking questions. Keep learning.
Good advice.
Science is always moving forward.
It is.
And who knows what amazing discoveries are just around the corner.
That's a perfect note to end on.
Thanks.
It's been fascinating talking to you today.
It's been my pleasure.
And we hope you've enjoyed this deep dive into the world of chemistry and healthcare.
Thanks for having me.
We encourage you to keep exploring the amazing world of science and its potential to improve our lives. Thanks for listening.